Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and thanks for stopping by. Our dedicated team will guide you through with the latest updates and theories at Starbase, Texas. If you're new to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon for future streams.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, Starbase friends around the world. Astro Joe here for another episode of RGV Weekly, RGV Aerial Photography, Starbase Weekly. Sorry about that, tripping up. We've got a great show with pictures taken from the air yesterday, thanks to the RGV team. I'll pass it on over to your host, Stephanie.
G'day, I'm Stephanie B from Australia, and welcome to episode 110. We've got some awesome photos to go through today, and I'll introduce our co-host. We have BJ. G'day, BJ.
Hello, everyone. Glad you're able to join us today. After some early fog yesterday, we got some nice clear skies and some amazing pictures to show for it. So looking forward to discussing them today.
And we have Todd with us as well today. G'day, Todd.
So Stephanie, BJ, everybody, hope you're all ready for a great show. Like BJ was saying, the weather definitely was fighting us, but man, these pictures turned out really good. We got to all thank Mauricio for these pictures. It's not the easiest thing for him, and I sure appreciate the heck out of them. So this is going to be a good one.
Okay, and with that, let's get started, and we'll go over to Massey's to start with. And as per usual, we'll go over to the flame trench, and we can see some excavation going on here. It looks like we have a jackhammer in here breaking up the stabilized soil down here, and this digger has been digging dirt out. And for now, they've been putting the spoils here and over in that back corner. And I'm assured by my good friend, the architect PK, that this isn't the best for backfill. So that's never stopped SpaceX from doing something that's not quite perfect. But anyway, that's what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, it could just be partially that they're using it to try and level off some stuff. And I think piling it up in the back, it's going to come out of the hole relatively slow. They could be just gathering it up so that when they start bringing trucks in, they take the bulk of it away from the site. They can do it a little bit more efficiently.
And we have...
Yeah, it's quite common for them to use fill like this for temporary stuff to get the backhoes back in and out and stuff, and then it definitely could be pulled out. Like you were just going to say, though, we got that retaining wall on the left side. That's definitely a new development. I don't think we've seen anything about that. And it goes down there. It's quite a bit. They got the footer, and then it's up to the level of the flame trench. So we expect to see it backfilled with something, possibly more than likely other type of dirt that's sized. What am I thinking? They're all sized the same to make it compact better.
Yep, I've got some electrical here. We're thinking that there's going to be the ship quick disconnect over the back here, perhaps a frame across here, and the quick disconnect up on here, and there's conduits and so on over here for the electrical, which could indicate that. And while we're here also, we can see the end beds here, which could have rails here, and we can see the old embeds in the vertical wall, which line up perfectly. So in some of the renders we have seen, I find a photo of it, this platform here could possibly end up being on here to slide backwards and forwards to allow access, possibly for SPMTs or for ground crew to get underneath the ship there to maintain engines while it's on the stand. And just going on that platform, it looks like it's getting ready for concrete. That's not the final deck. It's like corrugated. Perhaps they're going to put a concrete deck on top.
Yeah, I mean the corrugated deck put onto it, and then there's definitely a raised edge around the perimeter of it that definitely suggests that. I'm noticing too that there's those four. It looks like there's 4 potential embeds there for some form of securement that we'll have to keep our eye out on. I would imagine that'll be at the surface of a concrete pour if that is indeed what they're going to do with that.
And if we've had an idea, they would build a ramp of soil down here over that end wall to help the diggers get in and out, which has happened. Over on the water deluge, they've hooked up these massive pipes to these tanks, which originally we thought maybe for pressure, but it doesn't seem to be big enough, so we think it's more like a water hammer type arrestor.
Yeah, we've seen we've seen a manifold. There's a third manifold that'll hook up to the far end of those tanks. Maybe be that one right there behind the crane that maybe seems to be a little bit better size for maybe to be the high pressure end of that. When that those may actually be filled with water as part of the process, and then our gas will come from one of these other tanks potentially, or something that hasn't even shown up on site yet.
If you consider the size of the amount of pressure tanks we see at the launch site, we're definitely going to see a lot more of these pressure tanks, I would imagine. Up at this end here, we can see, we thought that was part of the weir originally, but it was never high enough, so we're kind of wondering what's going on there. But we can see that it's actually to span that pipe. So like the launch site, there's 2 separate water systems here as well, by the look of it.
Yeah, I mean we'll have to watch and see if it becomes 2 independent parts, whether part of it's for a flame bucket and some of it's part of a different water system, or if they'll all merge in the end, similar to how the deluge plate at the OLM happened to work.
Oh, we noticed on those 3 smaller tanks that are lined up there's obviously room for a 4th one, but it's on the sides of those are flanges. So looks like there's possibly more stuff going to be hooked into that that are going off the side. So definitely another thing to keep watching for.
There's mount for a 5th tank here, maybe just an elbow side perhaps, or perhaps something more on that side, correct?
Yep, that could be true. You're right.
But like anything at this stage, it's impossible to tell exactly what's going to happen. These pipes, green pipes, seem to have angles that suggest they may be the pipes that actually go down into the flame trench to connect the actual flame bucket up to the actual system here. We had an idea it may be for the methane burner, but I think more like it's water pipes rather than methane pipes.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be uncommon for kind of the coloring characteristics of those pipes to be gas related, but the two different diameters seem to be visually lining up with the diameters of those exit pipes. So that's what it leads me to believe that as well.
So that's good development there for the flame trench and associated water deluge system. So moving on to the tank farm, it appears quite complete. Mostly, you can see all the plumbing looks very complete, and also the lack of equipment in here, like welders and so on. It seems like the most of the tank farm is complete, and it looks quite pretty. They've got all the red here, all the electrical in red here, like they do on the chopsticks and etc. So there's only the last bit of plumbing to do is associated with the actual QD side, but I look at it over this side, which is great advancement. They're getting pipe plumbing ready to go over towards the flame trench.
Yeah, it seems as though we've just got those couple of remaining segments, kind of getting the elbow in there from there, and then the other elbow getting from the underground, and then those last connections over to the trench itself. Which obviously, with the construction there, I think anything past that concrete pad is going to be something we'll be waiting for another few weeks.
Yep, and they've even brought over the control lines. We understand these are for the controlling the actuator, controlling the big valves, the actuators for the big valves. So those pipes, those control plumbing is coming from the control house over here for the nitrogen and the LOX, and they go all the way independently of the rest of the methane farm, all the way around and even over to here. So it looks like this building's going to control this tank farm, and the other building's going to control the other tank farm still, which is interesting. Nothing much more on the tank farm, really. It's, like I said, it's pretty well finished off there. Okay, let's switch over to the flame bucket area quickly. Okay. We see there, BJ.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing them continuing there. With last week in the flyover, we saw all of these components a little bit more deconstructed. They've taken two of the smaller slope pieces and set them on top of the biggers, and to actually finalize what we think will be the last of the flame bucket supports for the upper portion. Then to the left there, we see two more of the bigger section. The four individual pieces that can construct those were seen in pieces last week as well. So they've got those done there. We're just waiting for a few more pieces, and we should have two more of the right-hand side constructed in the near future.
Also, looking at these two that are more constructed, it looks like there is the tarp in between them that will be possibly holding them together. Something's going to be in there welding them together. Looks like they're protecting the environment for welding, so that's an interesting thing. They're going to be going in two at a time, it looks like.
So from last week, we had a nice render from Ryan Hansen here, and it seems to be quite accurate. It's all going ahead just as we thought. Correct. They're looking like they're already welding these together as one piece.
And then there was a new development yesterday. It was after we got the pictures, but it looks like the second. Yep, there we go. The second piece is coming in, so possibly in two pieces. It looks like. We know we weren't sure if it was going to be two or three, but there's the other half, at least the other side of it.
Thank you for that, David Stoll. I'm not sure who you are, but thank you for that photo. Awesome.
Yeah, I think it's going to time will tell when we see these in a more flat orientation with them sitting upright. I think it's hard to gauge whether there might be a third piece that is just a ramp that doesn't have kind of the curves on the end. I do kind of get the feeling as though that these may only reach like the second stringer, and then that gap between the two middle stringers of the flame bucket may need an additional piece kind of to fill the gap.
I keep going back and forth. Like, I see it on the truck. It's like, oh, it's only going to be two pieces. But then you see the one piece next to what they have there, and it's like, oh, well, yeah, maybe it is three pieces. It's so hard to gauge scale from pictures versus down on the ground. It's always misleading, but I think you're right on the 3 pieces.
Okay, so that's a good development coming along. Let's have a look at that new test stand area here. A few interesting developments here, including this leg that appears to be the right size. I'm thinking one of the photos says there might even be a slight curve to this, but that looks like it fits these embeds here quite well. And we'll see if 5 of them are right. It seems to be in the right spot.
Yeah, and even on those embeds, we can see on the four corners, it looks like they've put a little bit of a guide indexer there that may help place them exactly where they need to be.
Yep, actually I hadn't seen that before. Yep, and we're thinking a in-between section in here, perhaps.
Yeah, we can see just above that. We may have even missed it in the last flyover, but there's actually 5 pads set up. Potentially, that those pads are all about the same size as the skinny end of that leg. So perhaps similar to the other ring that we suspect for the middle of this structure, it looks like they are setting up there to potentially build a ring of some sort that will sit on the outer ring of this, and we'll see how that goes here in the future.
Because this ring here looks more like the size of the center ring here, and it's had some more sections. It's 3/5 of the way around. And
Yeah, seems like we get a section every week, and give us a couple more weeks, and we may have a full ring.
So we've got a 4th and a 5th section still to come in. Interesting shapes going on with around the outside there.
Yeah, it seems like this is turning more and more likely to be this whole system, maybe a replacement and upgrades to the old can crusher. We did see this development here that they've added some new bracketry to the top hat to potentially do some more testing similar to what the Nosecone jail does for nose cones.
This will be to add lateral load to the test article and to induce some twisting forces to really test out those articles. And yes, at the same time, we're seeing that the old can crusher is getting disassembled slowly. All the rams have been removed. All this top stuff's been removed. Some of the scaffolding's been removed already. So that looks like that's getting disassembled. But looks like they're going to recycle the... Oh, wrong photo. They're going to recycle the can crusher top. And it also has had a lot of stuff stripped off it, but now they're rebuilding on it. So looks like they are reusing it. Not sure if that's new either down there, but probably not. Okay, now over to the stand. Let me see which photo that was. One of those photos we can see, yeah, this one will do. We can see they've added the tops here to the legs, and we can see some legs here that look like some kind of platform, some brackets here that might be some kind of platform out here to come.
Yeah, I mean, it would certainly make sense that similar to all of the other, like Pad B over at the suborbital tank farm testing site, that they wouldn't create a walkway around this structure for crew access. Whether it be if we get back to this being a mobile platform or a static platform, we're still kind of in debate on that. But for access to locking the ship down to it and other crew access needs.
And last week, those pieces were here. We just didn't quite see them and understand what they were, but they're those sections there from last week. So that's coming along nicely. What else is at Massey's we've not seen? We know that the power is getting run down Massey's Drive. Thomas was there for the launch and he got some good photos of them pulling in some power towards Massey's. I don't see any evidence of it at this end yet, unless it's already wired into this tiny little transformer. Talking to Dave, we understand that there is cables in the site, so there's every chance things like this transformer are actually wired into the high tension side, but probably not hot yet. So until they turn the big switches on at the end of Massey's Lane towards the highway, we're still running on generators and Tesla packs here. And I think that just about wraps up Massey's. Any questions and donations, please, Joe?
Got a lot of support here. I want to thank Barry Wood for a £5 super chat. Thank you for your hard work and dedication to all the team, front of house and behind. Todd Bernal, hey, nice one, man. $20, $20 super chat. Showed love and support. Let's get this train chewing. And Rocket Profit with $20 super chat. Yes, what Todd said. DeMars, $20 Canadian super chat. All aboard. Thanks, RGB. DeMars also gifted 10 memberships. 55 Chevy Guy Steve with 5 gifted memberships. Another 5 as well. I'm not sure if I copied that twice, but if not, thanks anyway. Not Tom B gifted 5 memberships. Rocket Profit gifted 10. Thank you. And into questions, Liam Donald asks, why don't they clear out that corner of Massey's? Do they not have consent to use that area? If not, why not?
I think that that section of Massey's actually is not owned by SpaceX. I forget if that's Parks or who owns that, but it's not part of the SpaceX property.
Got it.
Thought it was Park.
Go ahead. All right. JK Monkey is asking, what are those pipes for at the side of the flame trench? There are pipes everywhere.
So I questioned JK Monkey, and what he was talking about was the ones that came in on the truck, the flame bucket. Steph, they put a picture in Patreon Lounge of one of the flame buckets at McGregor to kind of give a what it looks like finished, unless you have a different render that shows what it's finished. But those were the flame buckets that the actual flames will hit. They'll be filled with water and probably be holes in it to allow it to stay cool.
Perfect. All right, Seabreeze asking, what are they going to use to transition from the stainless flame trench water pipes, Ryan's render and laydown yard, to the possible green water feeder pipe, which is carbon steel? So what are they going to use to transition from the stainless flame trench water pipes to the possible green water feeder pipe, which is carbon steel?
Well, that's a good question. Just going back to this last question about the plumbing, this is sort of what's going to happen with the plumbing here at Macy's as well, we understand. Perhaps a flange might be the answer to your question. Putting a flange in may be good with a rubber or some kind of something to isolate the dissimilar steels, because with dissimilar steels and moisture, of course, you get electrolysis and corrosion. Much the same reason why you have antifreeze, anti-corrosion in your engine. I hope that answers that question.
Awesome. And final question regarding Massey's just came in from James Sanford. Would the small tanks not need to be above the water line to be used to reduce water hammer?
Another great question. Not necessarily. If there's air on this side and there's no way for the pressure to escape or the air to escape, it won't be able to flow. For water to come back down into these tanks, air has to escape. And it looks like it goes down and then up again. So perhaps that's enough to stop what you think, the water coming back from the tanks into these tanks. If they're under pressure, the water can't come back, perhaps. But yeah, very good question. All of you, thank you very much.
My cue is clear.
Okay, it's perfect timing to go over to Sanchez. Okay, let's start with the rings down here, the transport stands. So many pictures to choose from.
Yeah, the weather was just great yesterday for these pictures. So many of them.
Just on a sideline first, we've noticed this actuator, and we believe it's for, I'm pretty sure I got a better picture. We believe it's for the ship quick disconnect arm, for the hull arm to pivots the hull arm. And this one has all the valves and associated equipment on the actual rams, like we see on the chopsticks hydraulic actuators. So we believe this is going on the tower for that arm, and we can see they've extended it. So and they've got a tent over, so they're actually working on it now. We may see that go up before the next flight yet. I think there's a better picture of it. Yeah, there you go. There's a better picture.
Yeah, it's one of those items that we've seen it sitting around for quite a while. I've suspected that it's an upgrade piece for the existing tower. I mean, certainly there's nothing to say that it couldn't be for future things. Of course, the activity around it that we've seen this week would definitely lean towards the former, that the speed of the arm is not adequate for launch and that they really want to upgrade it. And I think there's enough time here that potentially we could see that before the next flight.
You wouldn't think it'd take too long to swap out a hydraulic ram, although it is SpaceX and things are quite huge around here. Moving on to the transport stand, I can see some more work going on with this one. The old one, number 2, things get old real quick around here. The second stand still hasn't got its stabilizer pins. Interestingly, though, a couple of the clamps have been retracted, possibly for some testing. And we're probably
I kind of wonder if they're waiting for the pins to come in, and that's why they started the next one, or they just not need it yet. It seems like we're going to be needing 1 or 2 more booster stands here quickly as things progress in the Mega Bay 1. But kind of weird that it just slowed down, and it's been this way for a little bit.
Yeah. We've noticed a little hatch on this what we think is a cap for a booster. The main reason why we think that is there's 3 clamp connectors underneath here that match the top of the booster for the staging clamps. And now it has a cute little hatch on top, perhaps for crew access, sorry.
Yeah, it's a very minor advancement that we've seen on it. That piece has been sitting for a few weeks now, seemingly untouched. So it'll be interesting to see if we finally get a little bit more insight into what it's actually going to be used for, see if it supports our speculation, and also maybe some additional hardware that may need to be added to actually put it on top of a booster that, again, also hasn't been seen yet.
It's missing, definite lifting points. Unless there's little eye, it wouldn't be overly heavy unless we can't see little eyes here, little eye fittings for the load spreaders or whatever have you that they can lift it with. Okay, over on these mystery items. This week, from this angle, BJ, there's a hole on the other side as well we missed on the show and tell. But
yeah, I think I noticed it, and maybe we didn't quite get in, communicate it clearly. But yeah, it's definitely some interesting differences in terms of some of the access hatches, potentially maybe for ladders to get to different levels. It seems like maybe these 2 might be part of a common structure that goes up into a nose cone at different levels, given the fact that we see a little bit difference in dimension. And those accesses, I think, might be offset a little bit in the same form that if they were over the top of each other, you wouldn't be able to get through them with a ladder or such.
So it's over here, these 2 hatches are like on those 2 sections. One thing it is consistent is the placement of this hole in comparison to this notch. It seems to be the same. So they do appear to be going to be stacked on top of each other. And because they're tapering, possibly something to do with nose cones. So the outside little notch is a little bit different as well. So a few little differences. But yeah, very consistent otherwise.
Yeah, the only other thing I could think of, if they're not actually part of the same station, would be if there were multiple stations that they did different elements within the nose cone. Say you have a station A and a station B. One does things closer to ground level. Some do things more in the middle of the cone, it could be that they're part of separate assembly stations as well.
Okay, let's move on to the tower sections. We can see quite a lot of work has happened with the higher tower section here. Let's find a better photo. So here, can you go on with that, please, BJ?
Yeah, I mean, we've got towards the OLM side of the tower, the extension that leads over the top of the pulley structures has been fully dealt with in terms of its structural steel. It looks like all the roof supports have been placed so that they can start putting roof panels on. Within the actual footprint of the tower, we haven't yet seen them fill that in with the roof structure just yet. It looks like potentially they're still working on a few things. There's a mezzanine level in the middle there. It looks like they may be finishing up some cladding work there prior to closing in the top, so they still can get some crane work inside. And we can see on two of the corners, we can actually see I believe those brackets on the top are actually associated with the sky buckets, or like the window washer buckets that they can use for accessing the carriage rails for maintenance and such.
A little bit of work continuing on this tower section with the railing on here and the decking, I think.
Hey, Steph, I want to go real quick back to those two white areas. There's a lot of chatter going back and forth on whether this is a tooling equipment or is this possible HLS floors. Quite a bit going back and forth. Even Dave Avery was asking if it's possibly layers of the HLS. What do you guys think?
Well, go on, BJ.
I mean, I will say that that I wouldn't disagree with that as a real possibility. We did kind of see a similar structure built when they were building the current HLS nose cone back in the mid-Bay days. There was a floor in there that does kind of bear some resemblance to this. So it's very possible. It does feel like the components are a bit on the strong side for a vehicle, though. If it's part of prototyping and mock-ups, that might be a little bit more possible.
That's a good question, and good to see chat discussing those things. We've also noticed some more of these feet out and about and can't really understand why. Perhaps they're just protecting the bolts in the ground because they don't have any reason to use these anymore because all the sections are already built.
Yeah, I mean, at Roberts Road, there was an additional set that was over there, a spare set that was brought over. Kind of when they were starting to build Section 8, they were having a lot of fitment issues getting the columns onto the feet. Why they're sitting where they are now is a bit interesting, but it does seem like potentially they're just they've found a nice spot that is out of the way to store them in the meantime, because they have been doing a fair amount of cleanup across the Sanchez site in recent weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully getting ready for these sections, which have been slowly getting their staircase installed, which we believe is a replacement for the external stairs on the current tower at Orbital Launch Pad A. So this being the tower for Orbital Launch Pad B. And they're continuing to do that sort of work on the sections one by one. Hopefully we get to see these 5 sections come across to Sanchez soon. Okay, it's going to be ahead of time today. That's all good.
Yeah, and something we can see at the bottom of the screen here, you can see the crane segments. We'll get to the parking garage here shortly, but the piling operations have finished over there in the left corner of Sanchez there, just to the left of the towers. We can see the crane that was doing the piling has been disassembled to leave the site.
Oh, that's where it got to. They hide things in plain sight sometimes. A little tiny bit of trivia stuff. I can't quite see it. They're running this yellow pipe, which I think is for diesel for some reason over here. So something might be going on. Bit of trench work in that area. Okay, there's something very obvious missing from this photo in the rocket garden.
Yes, B4 has finally met its fate, and as of right now, it's actually about halfway completely scrapped, and they have not moved forward on the lock section. Last I looked at the cams, but the methane tank has been cut into pieces.
So before we go into details, I want to ask chat a question. How long do you guys think Booster 4 was in the rocket garden? It's been there a while, but what do you guys think?
That's a good question, Todd.
The rocket garden does not look the same to me. That is for sure.
And yeah, we kind of, a lot of people going, yeah, S20 next for sure, and get rid of this ugly thing as well. But and some people saying, no, let's keep the, anyway. They're going to need room for more boosters soon. Unfortunately, progress goes forward, and with their cadence, they're going to need these storage places for actual flight articles. Unfortunately, there's a bit of plumbing work going on under here. Not quite sure what exactly is going on here, but it's quite extensive. I think it's just water pipes.
Going back to my question real quick, let me answer because we do have quite a few answers. To my numbers, it is 632 days. I believe Booster 4 was placed in the rocket garden in June 30th of 2022, and that's according to the Ring Watchers. So it looks like a lot of you either already knew this or were pretty dang close.
You got a lot of good answers there, Todd. Well done. We've got 20 months, one Martian year. A few 600 odd answers, or 18 months, that's about right. 630 days, 95 weeks. They're all about right. Okay, moving on. Thank you, chat, for answering that. This sort of concrete area. Oh, go on.
But yeah, I mean, just commenting on that, it seems like we've got they're trying to wrap up some loose ends on a number of lines that are kind of running the perimeter here. I mean, right alongside the pads are between a couple of different water line systems, we believe, as well as even maybe some electrical might even be in there. I mean, I see a good 10 to a dozen lines that are still in the process of being hooked up around that perimeter.
There's been extensive horizontal boring or directional boring going on in this area over the past few months. So yeah, it's some tidying up of the plumbing. Yep. So this area here is being concreted. We saw that last week, but they're starting to put a temporary tent up and temporary offices. So it looks like it's going to be another workstation rather than what we thought maybe a scrapyard. Speaking of scrapping, we noticed that they've finally taken the top ring off the external engine install stand. We see a clamp down here, and they've not only taken a section out. Oh, I thought that was a cut there, but they've taken a section out already. A few remains of booster 4. I believe they took those two fins off so they could actually get it into the mega bay. They seem to have taken off a left and right grid fin and left the forward and back grid fin, if you orientated that way, and then took it into the building, into the high bay in that direction. And we've noticed them having to wiggle the fins around a bit to get them out of the mega bay, so the door's only just wide enough with the boosters with their offset grid fins. So B4 is definitely going to be too wide, I think, for the door.
Yeah, I think there's a number of things. The orientation of the grid fins, as well as it's still sitting on one of the older booster transport stands, and there's probably a good chance that those grid fin motors are probably, whether they're even installed or operational anymore, they may not have been able to rotate them to be able to get them in and out. So removing them may have just been the easiest course for getting in and out of the mega bay.
Yeah, okay. Have a look at that parking lot here.
Well, before we get to the parking lot, actually continuing into the scrapyard area, we should probably touch on. We can actually kind of see part of what I'm going to talk about and say here that in the next to the scrapyard, we've noticed that the hot stage ring, presumably for booster 11, as well as the forward 4 section of booster 14, have been relocated to behind the high bay. Presumably to put them in a more safe spot. We've seen that the booster 4 was all of the scrapped sections of the methane tank were taken into that area. So they likely needed a little bit of space to be able to do those scrapping, since the scrapyard is full of rings and full of mystery test articles, prototypes, whatever we want to call those other pieces that have been sitting around for a while but haven't met their demise.
Okay, with that, we'll go to the parking garage, the parking lot, as you all say.
Yeah, and like before, it looks like all the pile operations have been completed since the crane has left and all and such, and we've seen a further excavation of those piles to start working on additional pile caps for foundation. We can see down in the bottom right corner that one of them is actually formed up, and all the piles have been cut off. The tops of them have been cut off and prepared for there. It looks like we still have some rebar work to finish off before they can start pouring those foundations.
It looks like a pile of pile caps over here. Okay, what else is at Sanchez?
We did take notice that they're next to the scrapyard, the engine install stand / workstation. The ring for it has moved from over by the containers. It's now sitting underneath its platform, waiting on some of the other final work in the Mega Bay 2 before they can install that. It seems like everything but the legs are sitting in this area. Potentially the legs are already in the Mega Bay, whether they're installed or not. We can't really see very well into the back, into the right side to know which corner it's even in. It presumably is in the front right, in my opinion, based on where we saw the turntable go previously.
And I'm just trying to find the photo. There's some more work on the wall going on behind Mega Bay. We'll see that in the build photos. I thought I had one here from Sanchez. Doesn't matter. So we covered all those. This burn plate area has been tidied up, and some of these fences removed, possibly to let B4 out. This whole area has been tidied up. It doesn't seem like much more has happened with these burn plates other than just storing them.
Yeah, one other item that we saw a little bit more predominantly, we did look back and see it last week, but there in the middle of the screen, we also see a replacement booster quick disconnect hood is sitting there. Unknown whether this one's been on site and around for quite a while, so it's hard to know if it's hanging around for future use, if maybe they're getting it ready to do a swap with the current one due to any kind of damage from the first flights, but we did take notice of it this week.
Yeah, it was there last week. It was just here last week. They moved it to there.
Yeah, and there was also, I think it was in the middle of a couple of containers and a bunch of other stuff, kind of highlighting again the cleanup operations that they've really been doing.
Now, has that part been removed off the OLM, or is it just the back hood's been removed?
That piece is still on there. We'll see when we get there. The front hood is still on there. The rear hood has been removed for them to access some of the work, and we can discuss that further when we get over there.
Absolutely. Here we go. So the wall back here is continuing as the edge of the whole site, just to square off the edge. Let's have some questions and donations from Sanchez, please.
I want to thank Dave Avery for gifting 5 memberships. Thank you, Dave. Much appreciated. Questions regarding Sanchez. Stephen Lowry asking, do you think they left B4 out that long to see how long-term exposure impacts them?
I think they were just waiting for room. I don't think there was anything left on it that they needed to know about to learn about. I think it was just waiting for the right time in the room and the necessity to need more room in the rocket garden that made them decide to do it now.
They seem to be a bit slow at scrapping things, as we can notice here. The scrapyard's getting quite full at the moment. But yeah, as we've got, what have we got? 3 boosters, almost 4 boosters in the Mega Bay now. They're going to need room to store them all sooner or later. Well, hopefully 11 won't be there for long, obviously. We're down to 3 boosters in the Mega Bay.
And related to exactly that, Liam Donald asks, so do you think they'll need to expand the rocket garden? If so, where to?
Well, my original thought was over into this area, but that's not happening, obviously. For now, there's zero indication of that. Perhaps into this area later on might be an ideal spot to put it. For now, there's zero indication, but yes, quite possibly as they ramp up to their 9 and then 20 and then 100 launches of these vehicles, yes, I think we'll see a lot more rocket garden in the future, but not in the near future.
Indeed, and that's all the questions I have related to Sanchez. However, Craneman did ask a little earlier, did you find out where the red SPMTs went at the harbor? They were staging a lot of them, but suddenly gone.
No, they're probably owned by someone. They're probably being used somewhere else in the harbour.
Yeah, I believe in last week's, I'd have to refresh my memory of it, but last week they were over in one of the other docks near the offloading of another vessel. And I believe that they were associated with the movement of whatever was on that particular vessel.
Agreed. And thanks, Steve Coates, for a couple of bucks for the cause.
Thank you all for your generous donation and support. This ship came from Brazil, we think, full of steel. These steel plates with some ridiculous amounts of thousands and thousands of tons of steel. I digress. Let's go back to Sanchez. Okay, we'll go to the build site. Okay, what's going on? Let's start with the factory. Why not?
Yeah, continuing to see an ever-expanding amount of structure going on. One of the biggest keys that we've been able to see just because of sight lines from ground cameras and such is this front corner of what is kind of being referred to as the Nosecone Hallway, the angled wall that continues the external facade. It has actually reached the corner of the site as of this morning. And just continuing there, it seems to be a much taller section continuing. It's not following any of the roof pitches that we've seen from the nose cone section of the building. So it seems as though they're trying to keep a little extra headroom, kind of leading towards that exit that we believe will be on the back of the wedge once it's completely finished.
So this shot here shows the slope difference. This roof is sloping down quite dramatically, and that's more to go to different height bays, whereas this one is quite flat, but still sloping towards the back, as that little wall over there, that fascia wall, appears to be going to be the same height as across here. And if that's flat, we can see the roof is sloping below it. So we should have one height face all the way around, well, around the corner here. I think there's a corner, isn't there?
Yeah, well, the kind of those little extensions that are off the edge of those columns, they're getting a little taller as they go, indicating that the roof is sloping down. And yeah, I think once we get to that corner, I think everything's going to match there and give us this one height that it's going to make it look from out on the highway and some of the other ground perspectives that the entire building at least in this corner, is all one height, even though there's multiple levels to it.
And the big question on everybody's mind was what was going to happen to Star Factory Section 1. And it appears it's going to get a small extension, if not just this corner or even all the way across. So these are electrical bolts. So that's got nothing to do with footings, these particular pieces of concrete. But these are definite footings all the way actually to the building.
Yeah, and they stopped just short of the doorway to the Phase 1 factory building. So I tend to think that may be the farthest that we see the expansion go into. I think that corner in the left corner of that is still a little bit undetermined. We see the one excavator appears to be digging one more foundation there. It almost looks like since it's not the same, an equidistant amount, it could maybe a corner of where they may angle the very end there to kind of instead of having a harsh corner there for anything that needs to come out of the Star Factory and make its way into that driveway in front of all the bays.
So we've got big footing, little. So here, big footing, little through here, perhaps just to follow that pattern. So that's an exciting development, and that may give them some access in through here. Eventually, they may take this little bit of wall down, for instance.
Yeah, and we've seen in the remaining 4 kind of alleys, the rows of the factory have worked their way closer to the bays as well, getting very close to that external pad, and looks like we're going to be getting ready to see another concrete pour here real soon for that last little segment, and then filling in that strip that meets up to the old building as well.
I was just going to say that. I'm thinking sometime this week that strip will be poured and they'll be going on the rest of it.
We expect to see a large slab of concrete in here, which will give us a good indication of what this shape's going to be. I think there's still concrete to be poured in here by the look of it as well. So it's funny how this section they've put the concrete first, and this section they've been putting the concrete second.
Yeah, it seemed like at a certain point they had staged so much steel in places that they've kind of went out of order in some of their processes, especially in the concrete work, because that in that roadside section as well, there's a good amount of it that they've poured the footings, and they're going to come back and do the actual pad flooring after the fact. Something I'm just noticing now there's a curious void there in the middle of the building. I'm curious why they've purposely left the cladding off of that section. The framework is there, so it's even more puzzling.
It's a bit bigger than the HVAC units. The air conditioning units.
Star Factory just perplexes me. We see what it looks like. We see what it's going to look like. We can assume what it's going to look like, but I can't wait, and I really hope someone gets a camera in there and an interview with somebody so we can actually see what the heck is going on in there and why these weird designs, these extensions and stuff were put in. And I really hope one day we get a view of inside.
Let's go back to the bays. We can see booster 4 here. It's already been severed. And very soon after this photo, the LOX tank was rolled out, including its common dome. So this is all above the common dome methane tank. And what do you say, BJ? That's almost destroyed already. I mean, scrapped.
Yeah, we actually saw. I was after show and tell last night. Actually, I was watching cams and doing some things, and the forward section had actually been pulled out by one of the cranes and taken over to the scrapyard. We had already seen from some other cams that the 3 barrel sections that made it to the scrapyard had been tipped over and flattened. I'm sure that forward section is going to take a little extra time with all the stringers and grid fin to deal with. We didn't see the LOX tank make its way straight back into the bay yet. Overnight the door closed for other work, so apparently they felt like they needed to do some additional work in the bay before they continue scrapping operations.
We're really hoping we're going to get a shot down into Booster 4's aft section at some stage. The ring watchers are champing at the bit to have a look at the bottom of Booster 4 to see how corroded it is, or see what's growing in the bottom. They seem to be keen to have a look at the bottom of it anyway.
Yeah, given the fact that it still has all of its engines mounted on it, I would imagine when we do get to see continuing scrapping operations on it, that we'll probably see it cut off just at the aft section. And that, like Booster 3, I think it was Booster 3's aft section lingered in Sanchez for quite a while. I imagine we may see a similar thing with Booster 4's aft section.
Okay, let's have a quick look around the back of the factory.
Before we move on to the factory, one thing to just note, the Mega Bay 2, the door has been installed this week. That was a new development. I believe it was Wednesday and Thursday in particular, that most of the door. I think the last section went in on Friday. Actually, right there, we can see it in the flyover photos, just getting close to the bottom. So our views are very soon going away of that room, of that bay. One other note, actually, from Rover One Cam last night, we actually saw the left-hand bridge crane in Mega Bay 2 removed the ring of the first ship stand and placed it in the middle of the bay. So there's some kind of work being done to that stand, which may be why we haven't seen a vehicle go back to it yet.
Oh, that's an interesting development. They've taken the ring off this where Ship 29 was.
Yeah, it was around 6 or 7 o'clock yesterday evening. It was spotted in the background, and it was removed.
That may be also why they're delaying putting the third stand in as well.
Yeah, I don't think we really saw a whole lot on the timing of how long they spent putting that stand in there. I know when the second stand went in the center back, the laser station was in there a long time, doing some form of leveling and preparing for the ring. So I wonder if maybe they installed it a little bit rapidly to start working on engine install for Ship 29 or something, and maybe didn't take the appropriate amount of time they needed to get everything leveled out just perfect.
Just get it done itis by the sound of that. Actually, while we're just here, they've noticed the ship aft flap in Sanchez last week. So there's 3 here getting ready to be tiled. They seem to be arriving untiled with their pins and getting tiled here at the bakery here. Okay, we'll go back to the back of the factory. Thanks, BJ. Last week we saw bits and pieces of this little temporary truck unload bay. We can see the load levelers here, and it'll be let a forklift go up and down to unload trucks. I remember ages ago we saw that sort of a little unload bay in this area actually it might have even been where the factory was, wasn't it? In here somewhere there was one of these upload bays ages ago.
Yeah, I believe it was to the right of the empty land up there. So yeah, it's in the factory right now.
This wall, go on.
Yeah, just like a touch on it. It's interesting the amount of the lack of docking access for truck unloading on this factory is kind of interesting to me, and why they would have this. But I guess on the other end of that coin, it seems as though coils of steel are the only thing, and even there, it seems like they're processing the coils down into sheets prior to going into the factory these days. But the fact that the docks are over at the inventory tent, I feel like a lot of those smaller items that would come in on a truck that needs dock access, they go there, and then they're probably brought over to the factory, as opposed to the factory receiving most of its raw materials by truck.
Thank you. That wall, I think we saw last week, but the walls continue to here. And they still haven't hooked up the drainage completely for the stormwater. So we think they're still waiting on their permit to let stormwater go out into that wet area. They still haven't hooked up these downpipes yet. There must be a ton of water here when that rains.
Yeah, getting the approvals to actually discharge it purposefully from a single spot. I mean, you'd think that gravity is going to send it in that direction anyways. So what needs to be? But obviously, there must be some kind of regulatory approvals they need to get before they can actually get it away from the building instead of just letting it naturally run off.
Yeah, runoff versus directed is two different things as far as the environmental requirements are concerned. Even if it's all the same exact water, it's treated differently when it comes to the approvals.
And we see drainage here already going into the wet areas there, which is more than likely from the curb and guttering system. So they must already have that approval, which is interesting. Okay, that's about all from the back here, I think. Oh, they're digging more holes. They keep digging holes with these vacuum machines. Bit of work going on here, probably to do with that plumbing or some of the electrical still going on. Just quickly back at Sanchez, actually. This commodities farm, we're discussing whether it be for the whole staff factory, or perhaps just for the welders in the mega bays. It seems like about the same sort of size and all the different infrastructure as what we see here behind the Star Factory. So perhaps this does supply all the Star Factory, and the one at Sanchez just supplies the mega bays with their argon and so on.
Yeah, where it's located and whatnot definitely makes some sense on there. Obviously, whether they foresaw the size and needs of the entire Star Factory and that area in the back there is sufficient for it. I mean, it could be that both kind of work together to supply the bays and or the Star Factory. Even potentially, we could even see additional sites of gas commodities be installed around the perimeter of Star Factory for any other needs as they bring the whole thing up to being operational.
That's what I was going to say. I foresee more areas being set up similar to this one, smaller off to the side, because I mean, right now they only have a small portion of the factory under working conditions, and once they get to the rest of that, I don't think this will be enough. Maybe I'm completely wrong, but it just seems like they're going to need more. There's going to be a lot going on in there.
Yeah, we may see like one of these per section, like that probably would be enough for this section. So, and we believe there's mostly like the press is in here, so perhaps this is more about making parts rather than welding parts. Even then later on in other bays, we may see a lot more welding than actually welding rings. Though for now, we do know they're welding rings in here, don't we? Because that's where the rings are actually being made and coming out in the last while. Perhaps that'll change as soon as they can get access, because right now there's no access to bring ring sections out through here. So for now, they're stuck at booster 14 and up to ship 32. So we're expecting version 2 out. We may see some testing and so forth before we actually get any actual version 2 ships out yet. So that's something to keep an eye on in the future as well. Okay, let's go over to the office building. And we can see some substantial steel going up. And in our show and tells, which is well worth joining Patreon on RGV for, we have a lot of experts, far smarter than myself, that are like architects, like our good friend PK, Phil Kid, and he's letting us see things like this is an enormous span between this section back here and up to this section here between these pillars, and we can see some counterbalance beams here. And this may be to do with why these footings are so big, so it can carry these sort of counterbalance loads.
Yeah, we've definitely seen some interesting structure here. I mean, some of the comment that we've discussed is just striking how big some of the gusset work and the cross braces are compared to some of the other structures we see. We can kind of see across that's the one dog bone that they've started constructing, particularly at the second level, the second beam, which would be the floor of the third floor in the middle. There is a massive gusset there where all of the cross braces meet up with the columns. So it's rather rather large what they have going on. It seems like that cantilever off the front is probably may continue for all the way to the top of the building, given some of the tabs we've seen for additional steel to be added.
So they've taken the formwork out of the elevator shaft. We think that's the elevator pit. There's another pit over here with a sump in it for pumping water out, I guess. And the perimeter is getting more and more complete. And it looks like, where is it? Over here. I'm not sure yet if the perimeter is going to come in here on a bit of a weird notch here or out here still.
Yeah, I mean, where that actually goes, I found it interesting that they're kind of enclosing these two wings into a portion of the building, and then this other wing is going to almost be a attached separate piece, especially given the fact that the foundation work is kind of inverted from what we saw in the first two sides, where those dog bone structures are on the inside of the C as opposed to being on the outside. And it may very well come out to a corner. It does seem like if it comes and meets at the corner, some of the dewatering hardware may need to be removed before we get there, or maybe there is a slight jog in there. We do see on the smaller foundations where the curtain wall foundation is not directly over the columns, similar to where we have on the bigger structure where that curtain wall concrete is right next to the columns, indicating that the wall is going to be right next to the structure.
Yeah, they're laying this curtain wall foundations on top of these footings, weren't they? So it looks like it should go through here.
Yeah, and the existence of that one square footing there's kind of that opening that they're still kind of filling in that's in line with those four smaller ones. It does almost feel like there's still going to be a little bit of a step back, that the corner is not going to be right at the point.
And I could easily imagine a little roundabout here and the main entrance being in this area here. You may even be able to drive in here and drop off the VIPs or whatever and drive out again as some kind of nice entry quadrangle. It's not quite a quadrangle, more of a hexagonal.
Yeah, some kind of little awning on the front as a kind of like what you see on a courtyard to some of the office buildings. Oftentimes, I feel like you see those types of entryways.
Hexagongle's a word, mind you.
We can see there on the left. I'll touch on it. We've got a couple of additional pieces. Looks like we're going to get another crane arriving here soon. It appears to be, from the pieces we've gotten, that it's going to be likely the same model as the other crawler crane, the lattice crawler crane that has been here for a while. And then obviously the hydraulic crawler has been doing a lot of steel work.
Made a nice little runway for that crane all the way around. Going back to that argon farms, we may see extra argon farms like here perhaps. So we sort of thought that's what that pad might have been, but then they put a little shed on top. This little pad, we're waiting for July, I believe, before this one is back in court.
Yeah, June 10 is the court date to continue. That's the scheduled jury trial related to the sale of that property. I'm curious too, in the corner there, we've noticed that they haven't started putting cladding on the end of the roadside section, but that little L pattern of road base is kind of curious. That's new that has been laid since the last flyover. It almost makes me think if maybe there is going to be, if that's going to be some form of pad there for something. I mean, as we talk about needs for more commodities, I can't imagine putting it in the corner there, but it definitely looks like something new is going to be developing there soon.
And if they leave that open for us, we'll be able to see up inside there. But that's obviously not going to happen.
I love this shot. You can see how the angle back on the front of the Star Factory, how it curves back pretty well. Sometimes it's hard to see from some of the pictures. Sometimes it's really easy. But I just, of all the things they're doing, I think that makes it look really nice. But everything else, I don't understand their thinking behind it. But it's SpaceX. That's not our job to understand it. They just do it.
Yeah, it's sort of following the road, isn't it? That little bend. Some of the ground shots, you look at it, it looks quite exaggerated. So amazing photos once you get the clear skies here from the RGB team. Okay, we'll have a quick look over at the village. Not a lot's changed except they're continuously building houses. They poured a lot of concrete in this area, and we expect that all to be concrete soon, except for this little block of land I still haven't got access to.
Yeah, we can see the formwork kind of using doing some smaller pours and then using the existing ones as the formwork for the additional ones. It does seem like we've got rebar all the way around the medical building there as well. I think we were close to the medical building last week, but I don't know that we had gotten all the way around it. So the clinic appears to be getting some well needed cleaning of and access parking lot and all that around it.
Is that the clinic? So for now, there's there was a
Yeah, they moved. Yeah, it had moved around a few times as they've been constructing things, but my understanding is that that's the clinic up there.
Yep, that makes perfect sense. Maybe they're just using that other building as a temporary clinic until they get this, because it doesn't look like that's very easy access for the ambulances or whatever. They have been levelling this bit of land out slowly over time. Now, Todd and BJ, have we missed anything on the build site?
On the village? I don't think so. There was very little change other than just continuing on the building on the houses.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean,
that's good.
I think the only thing there that maybe we didn't touch on it would be that there's a continued utility work there over by the office along San Martin. There's 4 new vaults and a bunch of conduit run in there that obviously will be part of powering the office building.
Always conduit everywhere. Okay. Joe, let's have some questions and donations, please.
I want to thank Sharpie for a $9.99 super chat. Choo choo, best source of information around. Perpetual Nerd, thank you for $10 super chat. Chugga chugga toot toot. Got to make me say these funny, silly words. Got a lot of questions, starting with Crane Man. Could the Nosecone section of Star Factory be higher for storing a door like Megabays?
To put a door like Megabays. We think it's higher just because they're going to have perhaps the taller Nosecone sections, maybe with part of the payload bay attached. The Megabay doors, they could put a door, maybe when they have this doorway in, where is it, in here somewhere, perhaps they put one of those doors here as well. What do you think,
Yeah, I mean,
BJ?
it's likely that all these doors will be those fabric type fold up doors. I mean, when we look around the factory, all of the other bigger doors are that way. The one coming out of the phase 1 section is the one that's on the far end next to the office building. That is also a fabric style, the same type of fold up door. All the ones that are large enough for vehicle sections to go through are of that construction, so I have no reason to believe that all the remainder of these ones coming off the Star Factory will be of the same construction.
But I don't believe that's a reason for the height of the Nosecone section. I believe that the sections coming out are going to be higher than previously seen, perhaps.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see when they what kind of process they go. I mean, I could see for the location of the welding robots, I could see them still stacking them as individual pieces, but at the same point, I could see them putting the final assembly robots at a point where you see a bottom half, whether the bottom half includes or doesn't include the common dome, and then your nose cone and payload bay again having the common dome or not. I could see the whole thing coming out in two pieces out of the factory, one weld in the bay. That means there's only one tile section that has to be glued or maybe some form of pins installed after the fact. So I think we're going to see a limited number of sections that come out in larger form.
All right. Liam Donald asking, do we think they'll connect a mega bay to the Star Factory eventually? That way barrels will never need to go outside before testing.
There's been sort of talk in the back chat of maybe putting a sort of mezzanine roof on, but obviously it'd have to be high enough for the end product to come out, so probably not. I mean, they could go in the side wall here somewhere, but if you think, say, in this wall here, for instance, there's the engine stands back here and the turntables here, there's no real room in the bays to come in to the side of the bays or even to the rear of the bays. The really only place you can get stuff in and out of the bays is through the doors, through that opening. So it's unlikely, unless they build a roof way up high.
Yeah, I'm going to go with unlikely because, like you said, they either need a roof really high or they're going to have to modify the mega bays to get larger doors in different places. And most of those areas have outbuildings on them, side buildings on them. So it would be such a major change of things that I think they'll just roll them back and forth for quite some time.
The thing there, though, is in the past they were stored out in the ring yard and exposed elements, and the sun coming in the doors was affecting the shape and how the sections are welded together. So now they've got the doors on and they're not using a ring yard, and in future, because of the size of the factory, they won't need a ring yard external. I think they've only got to come out for this short amount of time. I don't see it being a real big issue.
Agreed. And on a related note, Toaster Chip asking, do we think those last foundations at the end of Star Factory near Megabays will be final staging area for the ring sections, since it looks really close to the Megabays?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to have to see as they finish structure what kind of bridge crane locations we have. I'd imagine that any areas that are going to be used for a staging lane will not have bridge cranes. Potentially that last bay could have it there for individual sections. I suspect that the taller ship sections are probably going to live in that hallway before they exit the door. But the smaller segments, if they continue to build boosters in smaller pieces, I could definitely see them having some kind of warehousing at the near end of the building.
Chat's messing
time
with
will
me.
tell. Time will definitely tell.
Chat's messing with me. Perpetual nerd. Do SPMTs have red rubber buggy bumpers? Yeah, that's difficult to say. Thanks, buddy. Liam Donald asks, any updates on what they're using the top of the Megabays for?
Nope.
Yep. I would say a lot of nothing right now, at least using anything productive.
I mean, they've always been slated as officers. Perhaps they can't do anything until, which you'd think they already have up there, some kind of fire system. And now the fire system is in place. Perhaps we will see them getting used in the near future.
All right. Bean is asking, how does the size of Star Factory compare to that of Roberts Road and Hawthorne?
It's bigger. I'm not sure the exact size. It's 1 million square feet here, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, I think once it's finished, at least as far as Roberts Road is concerned, my estimation right now would be the Star Factory here is twice the size of Roberts Road, approximately. I don't know anything about Hawthorne to really be able to give even an uneducated guess on that.
Thanks, Rocket Profit, $20 super chat. I slit a sheet I slit, upon a slitted sheet I sit, for the win. Ha ha! Nice.
Oh, that was
Well
awesome,
done.
Rocket Profit. Good job.
Well done, Joe.
Yeah, I give you props. I would have totally messed that up, and we don't have a bleep button, so we would have been in trouble.
All right. Todd Harris asking, have there been any sightings of the second launch table?
The OLM, no. Except that if it's the one at Kennedy, we have seen through the door on the odd occasion, but not over here, no. If everything else comes from Kennedy, like the tower sections have so far, we will expect to see the carriage, the not the chopsticks. They're already mounted, aren't they? Actually, hang on.
There's another set of chopsticks there that we would be able to see.
Thanks, BJ. I keep forgetting what goes on over there. And yeah, more than likely we'll see the OLM from Kennedy come over here, perhaps a lot more finished off.
Just to go back to that other question about size, this factory is about 1 million square foot, and Roberts Road is 320 square foot. Thank you to the back channel. I appreciate all your guys' help.
All right. Starsoon asking, will the office building replace Stargate? If so, will Stargate be demolished to make room for another megabay?
It remains to be seen. The Stargate building is owned, I believe, by the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley. So there's some kind of a lease agreement with them as far as that property goes. So I wouldn't say that it couldn't go away at some point, but this new office building certainly would seem to be able to replace it.
And we've got Creeper in the background there to thank for that Roberts Road square footage. Thank you very much.
All right. Seabreeze asking, there's been some discussion around the megabay doors providing a quote-unquote cleaner environment for engine work example. Since doors are mostly open, is there any air scrubbers to remove dust particulates?
There are units here. Perhaps they have some kind of filtering on those units. That's a good question. And we haven't seen any kind of air conditioning or units for the Megabay 2 as of yet, unless they're hiding in those buildings around the corner there. They may well be, these buildings over here may well have something to do with air conditioning. We don't know, really.
I'd like to thank Ms. Jax for gifting a membership. And Kyler Monaris asking, do you guys predict that the majority of ship booster construction will be at Starbase, or will most vehicles end up being built in Florida when Starship becomes fully operational?
So
go ahead.
this is a R&D factory. So essentially, this is to learn how to build a factory, as well as how to build ships and boosters, as well as develop ships and boosters. So this factory is more of an R&D site. So we may see more production in the longer future over at Kennedy. Go ahead, BJ.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think the research, they need to use this facility to figure out the best way to lay out the factory for rapid assembly, given the kind of cadence and manufacturing process that Elon wants for this program. So I don't see shipping the vehicles over to KSC being practical. So once they figure out the best way to construct them, they'll finish off factories, whether it's Roberts Road or if it's in the new facility, I believe that's kind of been rumored, to be able to build all Florida launch vehicles in Florida.
And with that, my cue is clear.
Chat's having a bit of fun with Joe there, I see. Good on you. Okay, well, let's go to our favourite site, the Yale launch site.
You're welcome, Joe.
Thank you so much.
This week, the team got some wonderful aerial photos from afar. This one here, we can see Port Isabel and La Padre Island and the beach, and we can see the different sites over here with a build site and a launch site. There's one in particular here.
Yeah, with the clear skies, we got some really good wide shots that Mauricio was able to take of all of the sites in a single image, and kind of give you a really nice perspective on some of the different angles on where all these sites are relative to each other.
Yeah, this photo we can see from the launch site all the way to the build site. And I know I'm not alone, but for a long, long time, I had this site backwards with the launch site on this side and Brownsville on this side. But it took me a little while.
I'm so glad it wasn't just me. I was so backwards before. I'm glad to hear it's not just me, because that was definitely something I was keeping to myself. Thank you, Steph.
So, and then moving on, we can see where the SpaceX housing, and we believe perhaps Mrs. Musk lives there or has a residence there, and we can see that's Mrs. Musk Senior, obviously, and we can see the development site where it is, and the storage site, and of course Massey's, and the school, and the control area, the control room.
These pictures are just so awesome, and we were to the point yesterday morning where we thought we weren't getting flyover because of the fog. So the weather cleared, and what a day it turned out to be up there.
It was a bit of a emotional roller coaster. There was no flyover, and then it's a flyover. Oh, yay!
Yeah, I'm going to say it again, you guys. We really need to show Mauricio the appreciation for what he does, because it's not easy. He goes in thinking something, that it changes, and I'm sure it's frustrating for the pilots too. We want a flight. No, we don't. It's so too cloudy. It's too foggy. He really works a lot harder than any of us can imagine on to get these pictures, because he's grinding away to get these. So I really appreciate it, Mauricio. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to thanks, Todd. Moving on to the orbital. Well, it's not so much suborbital anymore. Onto orbital launch pad B. We can see they're adding this manifold system, which I believe is not actually piping. It's some kind of flat, multiple pipes, much like what you might see on a solar water heater for a swimming pool. And it's just to help the water make its way out towards the edges. We can see the vertical wicks that have been put down in the ground quite a long way, and now just lying over the new black piping, and that's all continuing, which will allow water to seep out on the ends here, and that's to stabilize and to compact the soil below. And it's almost looking like they're finishing. Since they've lifted the crane up, they could finish this little area through here.
Yeah, one of the excavators has been working in that little triangle that they removed the concrete last week, to kind of continue in there. Now that they've got a majority of it done, we can also see up there in the corner they've started to bring some fill in and are starting to cover it up as well.
And they've cleared this area right out. So at the moment, we know they're looking to build on this little strip of land very, very soon. There's probably a little bit more paperwork to do on there. I'm not sure where that's up to be honest.
Yeah, I believe the public comment period for that should be coming up here in the next few days. I forget if it's the 24th or the 28th of March. It will be before the end of this month. For the comment period on that will happen, and hopefully within the next month or two, maybe we'll get approved. They'll get the approvals to fill that in and continue the progress.
And I've been told to help SpaceX, don't comment, because if you comment, they have to
Yes.
read the comment and review the comment. So it's more better to actually not comment, otherwise they get inundated with comments. Quite a few shots this week because of the good weather. Okay, let's say we've got the two recent ship stands at 28 and 29 we used. we're using Ship 29. It's actually, there we go. Something new at the suborbital. Pad B is obviously Ship 29 in all its glory. The crane has been just disconnected, I believe, in the last few hours.
Yeah, the crane is over by the storage tank or the cryo tanks over at D2. So it seems like they're the process of getting everything ready for the closure on Monday, likely for some static fire testing, is moving forward well.
Just quickly, and there's something missing from there, obviously. The whole stack. Okay, over the tank farm. Let's just jump straight in here. We can see they're continuing with this bit of footing work in front of the wall, and looks like it'll continue all the way around here. At least they've seemed to have moved the edge of where they're going to build to here, so perhaps we'll see this in concrete as well soon. And this little area here as well, they've exposed. Now these aren't major. The major cryo lines are over here, I believe, under vaults. I'm not actually sure what these lines are.
Yeah, I don't think I have a good reference to inform on that either. It does seem like they're preparing to put in a more stable concrete approach into the wetlands around that whole perimeter there, just to kind of help with some of the erosion it seems like they have from the water deluge system spilling over the walls.
And we can see they're hooking up these tanks here, and it appears they're putting it into the existing water system here. So these are going to be used for water tanks. We think this might be an overflow or a fill line because it's on top. So they must have an underneath line for draining. So that may replace this big tank for things like the fire extinguisher system here on site and the detonation suppression system on the launch table. And then they can remove this tank. And with the new nitrogen tanks over there, they may be able to remove this nitrogen tank too, but maybe not for a few more flights again still. Looks like they're finally going to clean up this tank with its damage from the few launches. And work continues on the subcoolers at the methane side.
Yeah, it's interesting that with the seemingly no functional issues with any of the subcoolers and whatnot, I wonder if that scaffold is there, if they're working to armor those hippos like they did the LOX hippos, because the methane ones did not have any of it. Of course, we've seen that armor and insulation didn't fare so well, so hopefully the second time around for LOX, and they can maybe get it right the first time on the methane ones.
Yeah, we saw some ground photos from around Intrepid Traveller, Thomas. These had quite a bit of damage just to the outside covering, insulation covering, as did this tank back here, which hasn't been repaired yet still. Okay, I'll move on to the front of the farm here. Let's look at some of the work going on at the front here. I can find a better photo. We can see some work going on here.
Yeah, it seems though they ripped out some concrete and put in some new with looks like some embeds and studs to mount something in there, where we think that it's going to be for some vaporizer systems related to those tanks. It's rather interesting that it appears that there's what makes sense for 3 vaporizers to be there. We haven't seen 3 of anything. So it's kind of confusing. We have seen 3 of some of the fan structures and some other stands, but the 4 vaporizers kind of confuses me. It could just be that there's an extra one that's going to go somewhere else of the same type.
Well, if what Zach's telling us, which is usually quite accurate, that they're going to remove this water tank and the water heat exchange to create ullage gas. We're going to need quite a series of these vaporizers to do the same, these air vaporizers to replace the water vaporizers in this bunkhouse here. So that's a good start towards that system. We did originally think it was going to be in this area behind these tanks, but that's obviously not the case for now. Eventually, once they remove these tanks, there's still going to be more room here. So it'll be interesting to see what happens as the vertical tanks get removed.
Yeah, something else to throw in there. I just didn't touch on it since we're talking about vaporizers. This angle, we got some amazing shots in between the tanks. We've seen in the past that there's vaporizers underneath the new tanks, but between tanks 3 and 4, I don't think it's overly new. But I think the angle we're actually able to see some pipe work that is actually running parallel to the pipes from the front to the back, and there's even like a stack there at the back end by the vaporizers. So definitely feel like there's some other equipment under there between like tanks 5 and 6. We can see a few different things under there. So it definitely looks like some of those vaporizers are part of systems, and they're actually going to be utilized as they are, even though a lot of the research says that we would be more likely to see those vaporizers vertical out in the open instead of underneath the tanks like they are.
Vertical things don't last very long around a launch though, so it's a good idea to hide them under there, although they're going to put these ones vertical. In saying that, that's a good spot there. Good on you. So we see still we assume these are nitrogen and these are oxygen. We can see they haven't advanced much on the LOX side, and they haven't advanced at all on this odd tank in the middle, whereas these tanks are going ahead quite well. Little observation, I think it was you, BJ, made that this tank is hooked to one line, this tank's hooked to 2 lines, and this tank's hooked only to the far line. So that's a bit of an interesting development.
Yeah, I think in some discussions, the two main pipes that are on the top of the racks, one of them makes a turn into the methane side of the tank farm, and the other one goes all the way down to the LOX side of the farm. So it's still unclear because those lines haven't been fully run, that potentially there's some kind of loop around the tank farm associated with how the nitrogen is routed.
So the methane side requires nitrogen as well, so perhaps that is the supply for the nitrogen for the suborbital. For the methane side. Just quickly going back to Massey, to Sanchez, we did notice some new pipe racks here, and they're a very odd shape, which there's even another odd shape there. Look at that one, BJ.
Yeah, these other ones, these little giraffe-looking ones, to throw an animal description to it, they're extremely tall, and just the way the footings are in the mountings, I'll be curious to see if they're trying to sneak these in between something. I feel like they're too big to get between tanks, but there's definitely somewhere in this farm that they need to get a couple extra pipes that are not directly over where they can mount those stands to the concrete.
So since the launch, they've got all their equipment back here, and they're going ahead on the plumbing again. So let's go look at the actual launch table. And they've added some timber walkways.
Yeah, it looks like they still needed some access, and in the meantime, since the most of the metal grate work that was on there for walkways blew away during launch, they've put in some temporary wood walkways to be able to get to whatever they need to. Obviously, we saw some damage to the conduits on certain elements. I'm sure there's a lot of other elements up there that they need to get to and refurbish for the next flight.
Yep. With some ground photos and so on, the actual plate, the QD plate, has been stripped as well as all the plumbing behind. If you look at the plate now from the ground, all the holes are empty except for the line-up pins Everything else on the plate has been removed. So perhaps there's a bit of an issue there. And most, if not all, of the flex lines and plumbing from inside the hood have been removed. And we're saying the hood's been taken off. Can we see it on these photos? Oh, that's two. There we go. Yep.
Yeah, that's where the hood is, and then you can see the door on top there that the replacement or another one is at Sanchez that we were showing earlier.
Yep, and that's actually quite dinted, that door, but nothing dangerous or it's been wrecked. But yeah, it's definitely got some dints in amongst that door. This area being blocked off, I thought maybe was because of concrete damage. It was more likely crane to keep people out while they're craning these plumbing down off the table. We can see the chains are still attached to the clamps for maintenance, and the crew are obviously very busy in there with all the scaffolds set up and their equipment again. So hopefully that bit of OLM work won't take too long. But it does seem rather extensive once again. So hopefully between this mount and the upgrades coming for this mount and the new OLM for Pad B, orbital Pad B, will be somehow more robust. Or maybe they don't have to do that tower avoidance maneuver and don't need to have all this charring. I'm not sure what's going to happen there.
Yeah, in this image, you can actually just make out that the stabilizer pin on the highway side has actually been installed. Looks like the one on to the south hasn't yet been installed, but you can just see it sticking out between the scaffolding there.
Okay, very good. Hopefully not too much longer. We'll see booster 11 over here, which would be awesome to see.
And as you zoom out, I notice that both pins are sitting on the side. That one has been installed, just not before between now and the flight.
Yeah, I was going to say, I believe it was
the pins are
installed
sitting over,
yesterday.
but yeah. I was thinking that it had been done yet, but it was apparent that they're still in the flyover. They weren't quite installed, but I do know that the one has been installed already.
That's all good. We can't get everything right all the time. It's fine. Believe me, I get things wrong all the time. It's all good. So it belongs over here. We can't quite see it as you thought. Cool. Here's another mount here. Very good. Okay, what else on the launch site? There's not much going on. Let's see if we can see the outhouse. Not sure.
Yeah, it seems that it seems like most of the work that if they're doing any work, has all been working on the inside, maybe working on the walls and all that kind of interior works. We haven't really seen any progress to the exterior surfaces of it.
Okay, we got everything from the launch site now.
I do think we've reached all of the items that have happened this week. I mean, obviously there's a lot of work going on the OLM. Overnight, we see a lot of grinding and welding and whatnot, but all things that are inside the ring and down in around the scaffold, places where we really can't see any visible progress yet.
Yeah, I was looking at the concrete earlier this morning, and it still looks like it's holding up really well. There was that one patch near the berm that they had been working on, but I believe that was something that they're doing to your left there. I don't think that's damage. I think that's something that they're doing with other work, but that's been freshly put down right now. Other than that, everything around the OLM is just looks great to me.
Okay, with that, we'll go into some questions, Joe, for the last time for orbital launch site. So everyone want to get their questions in?
Yeah, make me copy and paste questions while I'm reading this. Todd, thank you for your $10 super chat. Betty bought a bit of butter, but the butter Betty bought was bitter. So Betty bought a better butter, and it was better than the butter Betty bought before.
Well
done, Joe.
Great
well
job.
done.
Thank you. And Sharpie, $4.99 super chat. There is a chip shop in space that sells spaceship-shaped chips. All right. Smurf Trooper, thanks for a gifted membership. Stan J as well, thank you for a gifted membership. I do have some questions here. I want to address one that just came in chat. Hold on a second. Yes. No, I have that one.
Just
Sorry,
quickly on. No, you're right,
I'm going to miss that one.
just quickly on the side. The Hawthorne site is 226 square feet, and on this map here, on this photo here, the cryo lines come in through here. The main cryo lines are in this sort of area. Thanks, Joe, and thanks, Creeper.
All right. Liam Donald asking, did SpaceX get approval to use the land on the other side of the Gateways to Mars sign? I don't know why we would need that.
Not yet. I believe I forget where the property line is, but I know that area. A portion of that is part of the land swap agreement that is still in the process of getting through final approvals and all that stuff. I think it'll be quite a while yet before we see that. Plus, that area is all part of the wetlands. So, like the previous environmental processes with the Army Corps of Engineers before they can develop there, those wetlands are going to need to be dealt with in terms of approvals.
For now, I think with the orbital launch pad B, they may not be necessary just yet. It looks like they could easily fit a tower and launch ring in here. I noticed there was a question as chat started. Again, the question, will they build a tower and practice catching before they build the OLM? We still don't believe that that's the case, although anything could happen. Thank you, Joe.
Definitely. Kyler Moneris asking, how much more organized and efficient will the GSE end up being at 39A? I'm assuming that vehicle loading will end up being faster and will be much more hardened and protected.
I think at 39A, I don't think the loading times will be affected as much. We have seen in the initial preparations that a lot of the tank farm is farther from the pad itself, similar to how all the other tank farms are for many of the pads there at KSC. So I think the tank farm is definitely going to be more protected just because you're going to have them farther from the pad. I know some of the tanks are right nearby, but I think they're definitely going to have better protection because they have the real estate to deal with it that they don't have here in Boca.
Right. Liam Donald asking, why haven't they completed the black covers or walls on the orbital launch tower? I suppose the cladding for the tower.
Like many things for this site, they're kind of doing things as needed rather than what should be done, I guess. At the end of the day, the cladding for now is, I mean, they did add after one of the launches, they added more cladding. So they've only got just bare minimums of pretty well everything around the place. They've kind of got just bare minimums of everything to get the job done, to keep the R&D moving forward.
Necessity over aesthetics is what it seems like they're going for right now.
That's the words I was looking for, Todd. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think it's also worth noting a kind of an observation based off of the Falcon program. We've seen at 39A that the panel work from the Falcon Heavy launches has actually caused a lot of damage to the cladding on that tower. And I believe my understanding is that even on the Slick 40 tower, that they're not looking to actually clad that due to the same issues. So I would think that here they're just going to clad what is necessary to protect things, and the rest of it they're just going to leave open, I think.
Thomas Pickle asking, do you think the new launch pad will be more durable and not require as much work after launches?
We certainly hope so. Absolutely. They have learnt a lot of lessons for launch. I mean, we got to remember that this is the first time that a rocket of this anywhere near this caliber has been launched from any kind of launch pad, let alone a launch pad like this. So yes, they've learnt a lot of lessons, and the new launch ring definitely have some robustness upgrades. There was talk of flame trenches very early in the scene, and I've heard rocket people saying that a flame trench for this amount of engines and this amount of thrust probably wouldn't work either, hence why they're using this flat type launch pad.
There was so much unknown, like you say, about launching a rocket with this many engine and this much thrust that this is a learning experience. And I think we can even see some of the learning experiences that they've learned going over to Massey's, as far as like how they've changed the fuel garden, the tank garden, and everything. It's done so much slicker, so much cleaner. And I think when we go onto the third tower, the third tower and the stand, we're going to see as they go just the improvements that they make. Right off the bat, it's going to be more robust from the groundworks up to the everything else they do beyond that. We're going to see the differences, and that's kind of what I'm really excited to watch and see the changes is what they've learned and how much stronger they make it this time around. It's really going to be neat to watch.
Yeah, on that, you can notice the difference between this tank farm and the new tank farm at Massey's. It's so much neater and well laid out. So yes, they are learning already. So already we're seeing the improvements that you're asking for. So I'd say that's a definite yes to your answer.
Right.
I mean, two questions. Sorry.
Right, and along those same lines, it's probably already been addressed, but if it sparks any, new thoughts, I'll go ahead and ask this question from S. If the OLM gets beaten up every time Starship launches and they want to ramp up the launch frequency, this is simply not sustainable, right? Do you think SpaceX will rethink a different launch method?
Probably not for now. I mean, Kennedy still has the same type of table, although they are modifying Kennedy right now. We've noticed they've been chopping away at the legs and so on. So it looks like they're already modifying Kennedy, perhaps. And that's correct. This can't for the cadence. This table is not going to fit the bill.
Yeah,
I think
I agree.
Yeah, the next ring is definitely going to show it. I mean, Elon's hinted that this first ring and tower are going to get a series of upgrades once we have a second pad available for launching to not interrupt the cadence. So I think they're going to learn a lot. They're going to fix a lot of things, and then this one's going to get some retrofits to get that reliability and robustness that is necessary for the cadence.
Yeah, fully agree with BJ.
Right on. Well, that clears up my queue, and we are just about ready to wrap it up here.
Just noticing, chat, Santi just made a comment. There was talk about a water jacket for the OLM, so we may see that with the new OLM. Elon talked about that ages ago. So that's a good comment. Thanks, Santi. And yes, we can wrap up the show. So I'll say thank you very much, Todd. Really appreciate your input today.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I appreciate being here.
And BJ, the expert on the job, thank you very much for being with us today.
Well, thank you, and glad everyone was able to come and enjoy the show. Take a look at it, and like we said, amazing photos this week, as always. But the weather really gave us a great opportunity this week.
And I'm going to thank chat very much for their fun comments today and giving Joe a bit of a verbal workout there. That was very entertaining. Thank you. And behind the scenes, we have Emil and Joe and Jen in behind helping with scheduling, and there's quite a team behind the scenes here we don't always see or talk about, and the whole Patreon members with show and tell. We learn a lot about what we're talking about now. We learn and discuss during the show and tell sessions. So all these people are very important for these shows to go ahead. And with that, I'm going to say good day from Australia, and hopefully see you next week. We'll have Zach back again. He's having a couple of weeks off come next Wednesday, so that'd be great to see Zach back on the job again as well. So I'll see you in a few weeks. So thank you, Joe, and thank you everyone for joining in today.
Most definitely. Yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks for a great chat, and you all had some fun with me. I appreciate that. I had fun with you. Thanks everyone for your generous donations and gifts. Thanks RGV for getting these pictures for us. I know you went through a lot of hard work to get these. We appreciate it. With that said, most engines cut off. Hot staging confirmed. Love you. Bye.